Welcome back, all my 40k fanatics out there. I'm DJ here with Tim's Nation to bring you my list preview for tonight's battle versus Lane and his Death Guard. First time we're seeing his Death Guard on the channel in 10th edition, and with some recent data sheet updates, I'm definitely excited to see them. I've heard a lot of whispers, and actually not whispers, a lot of cheering and yelling online from Death Guard players that are very, very happy with the changes, so hopefully we'll get to see that on the table tonight. However, going into it, I will not be bringing the Necrons tonight. No, I'm giving the Necrons a little bit of breathing room. They've been doing well, and some of the models I need to get some paint on them, so they're up on my painting desk. Today, we'll be bringing the Grey Knights. Since the data sheet updates, I wanted to see what I could do with Grey Knights because my competitive list dropped 280 points, and that's a lot. And traditionally, I don't like just slapping things into an army. I would completely erase the thing and put it back together and see how it comes about. But when I erased the thing and put it back together, came up with a similar result. I really like the way that my list played into the secondary and tactical objectives. That's a strength in the game that I personally prefer. And especially with all of Grey Knight's maneuverabilities, being able to pick up and bounce around on the field. So a lot of my list actually maintained the same. This was the same list that I took to the Arch City G team and took home the War Master prize for basically best general, and I wanted to run this again and see with the point increases if we could get even just more strength out of this list and what else we could put in there. So again, I did wipe it clean, but it came up with about the same thing. And when I looked at the 280 points and what I was putting in and switching out, came up with the same answer. So this is one time that I actually am just taking that 280 points for the most of it and adding to it with only one thing that's getting dropped. And this isn't because of the data sheet updates as much, it's because of roles in the army. And the Calidus Assassin has gone to the bench. Originally, I kept her into the list because of the fact that she could infiltrate and get on objectives early, but with some other little changes and some tweaks, I still have that capabilities. Now, just more Grey Knight focused. All right, guys, if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please do. Turn on the bell for notification, get notified on all the content we bring here on the channel, including Lane's army list breakdown, which we'll be featuring later on today. And yeah, that's about it. So let's get over to the list and talk about all the silver greatness we're going to be bringing tonight. All right, here we go. Here is my Grey Knights that I'll be bringing tonight, my teleport assault force. As you can see, I took the pictures over here today to get a little bit of I wanted to get my background in, my beautiful, beautiful Grey Knight artwork that I had in the background. I wanted to pull that forward. That was a very interesting and cheap find. I can't remember where I got it, but I got it off of a website, got it super cheap, and happened to know someone who could stretch canvas. So they stretched it for me. And yeah, it just really cool piece to have in the basement that I was able to get. And thank you to a buddy of mine who will remain nameless for being able to stretch that for me. All right, let's go over to the list itself. So a lot of this is all looking the same. We'll still cover it and why they're in here, but there's a couple little changes as the army is kind of increased in size just a little bit. Not too much added, but some tweaks. All right, let's start off with, let's go with the 2 5-man interceptors. So in this list, I'm bringing 2 5-man interceptor squads. These guys have the ability, quote unquote, fire and fade. So once they shoot, they can then move a second time. This is a beautiful unit for doing things like engage on all front and behind enemy lines in situations that I might not normally be able to get into. Also, coming off the Land Raider, these guys basically could end up looking at like a 21-inch move, 3 inches off of the Land Raider, 12-inch for their move, giving them a 15-inch move, and then shoot, and then get that additional 6-inch move, taking them to 21 inches. That's a lot of distance. And given the fact that even long ways towards center is 30 inches from the back of your table to center, you're not going to be at the back. You'll have your Land Raider up further. So these guys can get pretty deep in your opponent's deployment zone or table quarters or whichever you may need for secondaries just coming off of the Land Raider. With that being said, on the deep strike as well, being able to fire and fade since it's in a different phase, getting in there, tagging an objective, and putting a couple extra bodies of objective control on an objective. One thing that this list really does play off on very well is being able to play a math game when it comes to objective control value. Other units in my army have objective control value 2 or 3, so these guys being able to give just 1 point more can really help just to tip the control value of one of those objective markers. Moving over to one of the big objective control pieces in my army is my 2 5-man squads of strike. Now, one of the 5-man squads of strike is going to be by themselves. Most of the game's inside the Land Raider to start off, so they can get out, in a possibly sticky objective, my home objective, or just be available to start teleporting around the field. So they'll probably start in a Land Raider. The other 5-man is going to be joining my Tech Priest. Yeah, or Tech Marine. Yes, he is not painted yet. I've been working a lot on Necrons. I'll try and get a little more paint on him before we actually play today, but right now, yeah, he's definitely an icon of gray knights, as he is gray. He is not plastic gray. He is base coated gray, with his 4 servitors that have multi, 2 of them having multi-meltas. So this squad is going to be joining with one of my 5-man strike squads, as you can see here, and they are going to have the Sigil of Exigence on the Tech Marine. This means that if I get shot at, I can pick the unit up and re-deep strike them down 9 inches anywhere on the battlefield. With the sticky objective of the Strike Marines, this could allow me to turn an objective and flip it to my control right there that I wasn't normally on. These guys have been, as I like to call them, this is my small child running around from room to room flipping light switches. So this is my child turning on light switches. They just go into an objective, flip that light switch on, and move over to another one, making my opponent have to constantly chase me around the field to flip off the objectives. Otherwise, I'm scoring them and controlling them well into the turns that they don't want me to when I'm trying to move across the field, or might be diminishing my resources. Well, the other squad can't teleport quite as well because they don't have the one getting shot one time. Oh, also the 5-man with the servitors is in basically like a 10-man squad, which hurts for blast weapons, but it gives me a couple extra bodies there in the servitors to take some damage before I have to lose the more valuable strike marines. And multi-meltas are cool, especially when they're pretty cheap. The other 5-man is not quite as efficient in that, but again, still having sticky objectives is good. Grey Knight combat potential is good. Both squads have a side cannon. In the Interceptors as well have a side cannon because they're free and they do 2 damage. So we have a little bit of extra hate there. For the most part, these guys are meant to be able to play secondaries. 5-man squads are able to move through runes and teleport around the field very easily, much like the Interceptors with the teleport assault rules. So these guys are going to be able to just get where I need them to be to score points, early game, late game, all the game long. Now, the last of the kind of just there for point scoring units is a 5-man squad of Voidsmen at Arms, with other squads going up in points. These guys are still cheap at 50 points for 5 guys. Their objective control value too. There's not much to say here, except the fact that this list I actually had to come out to 2,000 points on pin, and these were perfect for doing so. They're going to sit on the table in backfield. Maybe they'll die, maybe they won't. Maybe they'll shoot something, maybe they won't. Doesn't matter. Their point is existing as 50 more points of onboard units per Leviathan pack to allow me to meet the minimal and maximum requirements for putting things in reserve. Now, so we talked about my Tech Marine, his Sigil of Exigence, and him teleporting around the field with a strike. We got our other strike and teleporting. Now let's start talking about some of our other more techie pieces. We're going to translate that over with our Terminators. So I got a 5-man squad of Terminators, and these have kind of been a never leave home without them. Because of the banner and the apothecary, these guys are tough to kill. They can constantly be putting a guy back in the squad, and the banner makes the entire squad objective control value 3, giving them +1 to their objective control value per guy. This means that one lone dude can start stealing objectives from people, and I can spread this squad out to cover more field and just really control a lot more of the field with all these guys. Also, because it's a 6-man squad, well, right now it's a 5, but you'll understand why I said 6 in a second, I can still string them out within coherency of each other, since anything 6 models and under can only need to be within range of one other model for coherency. Now, the reason why I say 6, oh, also these guys are very, very strong in combat as it is. being able to have hammer hand access as well to get lethal hits. So they're not bad at all. And the sixth guy is going to be our Grey Knight Librarian with First to the Fray. So the Grey Knight Libby has a never-ending damage profile, from his combi weapon to a wimpy purge soul that could be cool against a character sometimes, to a vicious vortex of doom. He could dish out a lot of damage really quickly and just be obnoxious to just see on the board and know if you can't answer him immediately, he's going to hit you. He's going to hit you hard, and he's going to hit you fast. Now, he is First to the Fray. And I've seen a lot of Grey Knight players talk about this as a dead enhancement, because you're paying, first of all, 35 points for this ability. And realistically, within the Leviathan mission pack, you still are required to have a certain amount of points on the board. And that's kind of where the Leviathan mission pack kind of gets you with this ability and doesn't make it as relevant. Because the first one says, oh, it doesn't count against your total for being in reserve. But it will count against your total for being on table. So that first ability of the point kind of hurts you. Now, the second part is relevant for competitive play. And that says that this unit may appear on the first, second, or third battle round. So this is a unit that from Deep Strike can Deep Strike onto the field on the first turn. Now, where the Calidus was able to infiltrate and be close enough to an objective to tag that objective on turn 1 if need be, these guys could just teleport. Now, and also at that same time too, I'm able to draw my secondaries before I decide whether they're coming in or not. The Calidus, if I pick her up, she's going to have to come back down. Now, and that's not horribly terrible. It's a different way of looking at the tech. It's a different way of playing the tech piece. But this does allow me to, because the Librarian doesn't have to attach. I could drop the Librarian by himself and put the Terminators on board or in reserve by themselves. So there's a little bit more tech with this than just that. At 135 points for the Librarian, it is more expensive than the Calidus, but the damage output that comes off the Librarian is pretty impressive. So we're going to give him a try today. There is some room to possibly go into a different character on the Terminators or a different route, but I definitely want to give him a go, and a lot of that comes to the fact that I spent a significant amount of that 280 on something else that we will talk about shortly. All right, moving over into one of my other big hitters, the Purifiers. So my Purifiers is a 10-man squad with 4 heavy incinerators. Then we have the Purifying Flame. And what Purifier squad would not be complete unless they were led by Castellan Crow. Castellan Crow gives them an additional +1 to all of their Purifying Flames, as well as he's just a mean man in combat. He's he's brutal, and he's able to take he's able to do a lot. I've had him do a significant amount of damage and really hurt a lot of units just by himself. And then if the Purifiers are removed, he's tough to peel back himself. Given the fact that him, like the rest of the Grey Knight army, have a 2-up save, he also comes with a 4-up invuln and is going to ignore the first damage result that he takes for the battle round, or 0 it down. So that's a nice way to help keep him alive. In general, the squad is really good at ripping infantry off the table, which if you've seen some of my previous videos, I like to try to remove all of the infantry from my opponent's side of the field, or at least the aggressive infantry, as fast as possible, so that my opponent has much more difficulty in scoring secondaries. So even if my army is kind of whittling away and I'm running out of resources, I can still score points over my opponent, who may have more difficulty getting to objective markers, territory, etc., in order to score points and ultimately win the game by scoring points, not by killing units. All right, so let's get into the big and chunky. First of all, the Land Raider. My Land Raider I'm so happy to be using this guy. I mean, I know that many Marine players have Land Raiders. Anyone who's played 40K for a long time has at least one Land Raider in their collection. and it's collecting dust, and it sits on a shelf. And here we go. Now there's a time that a Land Raider is not only viable, but actually a pretty good option. Grey Knights lack a lot of long-range damage, and Land Raider is probably one of the only real long-range damage-dealing weapons that we have that comes in at a moderate point cost. Because of the fact that it does not have twin-linked las cannons, instead it has 4 Godhammer las cannons. Each one of them is its own individual shot, and then the Hunter Killer Missile, and then the Multi-Melta, and then the Storm Bolter, and then the Heavy Bolter. This dude's got a lot of this. He's a gunboat. He is a gunboat. He's also a good place to protect some of my smaller units that I don't want to get picked off by artillery early on in the games. Now, with the change to towering, as well as the change for things like Desolation Marines maxing out at 5-man squads, I feel safer with putting some infantry on the table. But that doesn't mean that I don't still like things like being able to pop a squad of Interceptors off of the Land Raider for an extra 3 inches to the move, or being able to move strike a little further to be able to charge in those positions. So there is still some cool things that the Land Raider is able to bring. And as well, like I said, is probably one of the best long-range options that I have in this army and Grey Knights in general. All right, and last, but simply not least, you're not seeing double vision here. That's right, we have 2 Nemesis Dreadnites now. As before, we just had the one with the hammer. Now with the point drop, I'm bringing another one. I'm bringing the bigger brother of the 2, one with a sword. So I feel like in the end, I'm going to probably want 2 hammers. Just because of where I have so much anti-infantry, so much anti-infantry damage and everything else, it's probably going to be having a second hammer for that damage output. But, I want to try out the sword. I want to see how it feels having one with a sword for a couple reasons. One, I converted this model up, and I love the way it looks. So, yeah, getting a chance to use him, I prefer that. But 2, being able to have all-purpose builds and be able to handle multiple sources. The sword isn't bad. It's just not as strong as the hammer in comparison when you say, okay, well, tank shock. Tank shock, the hammer is better. Okay, fighting a vehicle, the hammer is better. Fighting infantry, the sword is better. But I have so much other things that go into infantry. So I feel like I might be dedicating too many resources in on that side of it, and I probably should just stick with having hammers on everything. But we're going to give it a try today. We're going to see, because there is other kind of mid-class infantry, and I will see some of that today with the Plague Marines and some of that mid-tier infantry, that having the sword might actually be better, where things like my bolters or the Purifying Flame might not be able to handle. Things that are not infantry, but are lower toughness, like bikes. And when I say lower, I mean like T5 and down, or even T6 and down. Bikes or monsters, beasts, and things like that. That having him in there might be that little, I don't know, like super secret tech to be able to get through some of those other non-infantry, non-vehicle data sheets that could give me issues because of how they fall in the different damage tiers of things. All right, so there you have it. There is my Grey Knights that are going to be played against Lane tonight. Again, this army is very, very focused on playing the secondaries, where very few of my units, the Dreadnite, the Land Raider, those are the things that are going to be more aggressive and try and pick up units and do damage and keep board control. While other units in my army, the Strike and the Interceptors, primary goal is just scoring secondaries. Even things like the Purifiers, while it's a 10-man squad, the reason it's a 10-man squad is so it can hit, eliminate infantry fast, get whittled down to nearly nothing. But the critical point is, with my army, unless it's gone, it is still a problem, because it could pick up and go somewhere else on the field and deploy teleport homers or engage on all fronts behind enemy lines, whatever I may draw. A single model that is not battle shocked and actually even battle shocked in most of those situations, can still score points on secondaries and just plop down all over the field, which is one thing Grey Knights do so well. I found success with this list when we had less points. Now, a second Dread Knight, a Librarian that can bring my Terminators into another area turn one, which one thing I noticed with my army before was when I would put the Terminators down, I'd have to be defensive because I was worried about artillery. And a lot of thanks to Lane, because Lane was running a lot of artillery. He had Whirlwinds in his list. And sometimes Desolation Marines, give or take, back and forth. So I got to fear and respect having that artillery down there. So it didn't hit me as hard tournament time. But with artillery reduction, and one thing that I noticed, it was tough with having the Terminators in the same corner as the Land Raider because I had too much bulk there. And it was tough to get the Terminators out without picking them up to drop them back down. Now, even if I go first, I can drop the Terminators into a corner objective and start playing off that corner objective super, super early. Trust me, if I could do it with Interceptors, I probably would. But that really, I feel like it gives me a little even more speed. You know, with the Calidus changing over, it's not as necessary. So now I feel like I have more speed, more resilience, and some more damage dealing against games that you guys had seen versus Custodes. I was able to do a lot of damage versus a very, very tough army. So now we have more damage we have more things to do damage with, more threats, and it's going to start falling down the food chain on what gets hit and when. So that's my list for tonight, guys. Let me know what you think. I'm really interested to try out the Librarian, see how he rolls. Not 100% sold on him. He's a little pricey for what he's doing. I kind of feel like I'd rather go with a Grandmaster, being able to pop there's the strat that is 2 command points that gives us devastating wounds. Being able to do that for free, because that is a battle tactic, seems nice, and things like that. Oh, one other thing is talking about stratagems. I should have said this much, much sooner. I hope that you've tuned into the end of the video for this. Rapid ingress does work for my unit that drops in turn one. So if my opponent goes first, at the end of their movement phase, I can spend a command point and rapid ingress the Terminators in on turn one onto an objective or into a position to be able to charge. And that's another reason why I'm strongly considering the Grandmaster, because of how much of a beast the Grandmaster is in combat, to be able to get these guys into combat super quick. So rapid ingress, if you look on the wording of it, it's very specific. And it says, this allows a unit to deep strike in a turn when it would legally be able to. So while typically you cannot rapid ingress a deep strike unit on turn one, because you're not allowed to deep strike on turn one and reserves cannot become available on turn one, because the enhancement does allow you to be available on turn one. This means that if my opponent goes first, I can rapid ingress the Terminators in on turn one, which could be very, very vicious and could really put my opponent in a position of, those Terminators are right there. What am I going to do? Because Terminators are pretty tough. Grey Knight Terminators are pretty tough. And you slap a Grandmaster on the helm, they're going to be really mean and really tough. Who knows? Maybe the Librarian will give me the same boost. I mean, he's got Vortex of Doom is very nasty, very, very nasty. And you roll a 6, it's going to be a great day. Because then suddenly you're going to feel for a moment what all those Wraith cannons felt like on a Wraith Knight when you go, well, here you go. You're about to take 2d6 mortal wounds. Let's have fun. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed this video. I'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for watching.